Amy Chen stood in the main cargo bay of the human ship called Meridian. She wore her blue uniform with the science officer badges on her chest. The ship had been flying through space for 6 months now, doing research and mapping new star systems. Today was different, though, because the aliens were coming aboard for their monthly check. Captain Roy Martinez walked beside her as they waited near the main entrance. He was a good captain who always tried to keep his crew safe. Roy had been in space for 15 years and knew how to deal with difficult situations. Amy respected him because he listened to his officers and made smart decisions. The big metal doors opened with a loud hiss. Cold air rushed in from the alien ship that was attached to theirs. Amy could smell something strange, like burning metal mixed with old leather. She tried not to wrinkle her nose because she knew aliens had different smells than humans. The first alien to step through the doorway was huge. He stood almost 9 feet tall and looked like a giant lizard walking on 2 legs. His skin was covered in dark green scales that caught the light from the ceiling. Scars ran across his face and arms, showing that he was a warrior. His yellow eyes looked around the cargo bay like he was searching for something to attack. This was War Commander Thrakmol of the Korthak Dominion. Amy had studied his species for months before this mission. The Korthak were a warrior race who believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. They thought humans were weak because humans preferred to talk instead of fight. Thrakmol was known for being especially cruel to other species. Behind him came 3 more Korthak soldiers. They were smaller than their commander, but still much bigger than any human. They carried scanning devices and data pads. Their job was to check that the human ship was following all the rules from the peace treaty that both species had signed 2 years ago. Roy stepped forward and spoke in his most polite voice. "War Commander Thrakmol, welcome aboard the Meridian. We are ready for your inspection." Thrakmol looked down at the captain with disgust. His forked tongue flicked out to taste the air. "Your ship smells of weakness, human. Like all your kind." Amy felt her hands tighten into fists, but she kept her face calm. She had been trained to deal with hostile aliens. The peace treaty was too important to risk over insults. If the treaty failed, there would be war between humans and the Korthak. Millions of people would die. The alien commander walked into the cargo bay like he owned it. His heavy boots made loud sounds on the metal floor. He pointed at different containers and machines with one clawed finger. "Show me your weapons storage areas first." Roy nodded to Amy. As the science officer, she knew every part of the ship better than anyone else. It was her job to guide the aliens through their inspection. She had done this 5 times before with other Korthak teams, but never with Thrakmol himself. "This way, War Commander," Amy said in a respectful tone. She led the group toward the weapons locker at the far end of the bay. The treaty allowed human ships to carry basic defensive weapons, but nothing too powerful. As they walked, Thrakmol made nasty comments about everything he saw. He called their computers primitive and their hull design stupid. He said human engineering was like something a child would build. Amy bit her tongue and kept walking. They reached the weapons storage area. Amy entered her security code and the heavy door slid open. Inside were 20 laser rifles, some sidearms, and basic defensive equipment. Everything was exactly what the treaty allowed. Thrakmol pushed past Amy to look inside. His shoulder bumped her hard as he went by, but she thought it was an accident. The alien pulled out one of the rifles and examined it with obvious disgust. "Pathetic," he said. "My people make toys more dangerous than these." One of his soldiers began scanning the weapons with a small device. The machine beeped and showed green lights, meaning everything was legal. Thrakmol seemed disappointed that he could not find any problems. Next, they went to the engine room. Chief Engineer Pete Johnson met them there. Pete was a friendly man who loved to explain how things worked. He had been working on spaceships for 20 years and knew every bolt and wire. "The quantum drive is our newest technology," Pete said proudly. "It lets us travel faster than any human ship before." Thrakmol snorted. "Still slower than our oldest ships. Your species crawls through space like insects." Amy showed them the main computer core next. The room was filled with glowing screens and humming processors. Everything was clean and organized. The Korthak soldiers scanned everything but found no violations. "Your data storage methods are inefficient," Thrakmol declared. "No wonder your people learn so slowly." They visited the medical bay where Dr. Karen Smith showed them the equipment. Then they went to the crew quarters and the dining hall. At every stop, Thrakmol found something to criticize. He seemed to enjoy making the humans feel bad about their technology and their ship. Amy began to notice something strange, though. The other Korthak soldiers were not acting like their commander. They did their jobs professionally and did not make rude comments. Sometimes she caught them giving Thrakmol worried looks when he was not watching. The final stop was the main laboratory where Amy did most of her work. This was her favorite place on the ship. The walls were covered with star charts and data about different alien species. Computer screens showed the results of her research into new planets and life forms. Thrakmol looked around the room with his yellow eyes. "What is this place for?" Amy felt proud as she answered. "This is where we study the galaxy. We map new star systems and catalog different forms of life. Our mission is to learn and explore." The alien commander made a sound like laughing, but it was not a happy sound. "Learning is for the weak. Strong species take what they want instead of studying it." He walked over to Amy's main computer terminal. The screen showed her latest research about stellar formations in nearby systems. All of this work was allowed under the treaty. Humans had the right to study and map space in this region. Thrakmol read the data on the screen. His scales began to change color slightly, which Amy knew was a sign of anger in his species. "You dare to map our sacred star systems?" Amy stepped forward calmly. She pulled out her data pad and showed him the relevant treaty sections. "War Commander, our stellar mapping falls within approved parameters. Article 7 specifically grants us navigation rights in contested sectors." She began to explain the legal framework that allowed her research. Her voice was respectful but confident. She knew the treaty rules better than most people because she had helped write some of them. That was when everything changed. Thrakmol's clawed hand shot out faster than Amy could react. His palm struck her chest with tremendous force, lifting her off her feet and sending her flying backward. She crashed into a supply crate with a loud bang that echoed through the laboratory. The impact drove all the air from her lungs and sent sharp pain shooting through her ribs. Amy slid down the side of the metal crate and landed hard on the floor. Her data pad clattered across the room. She could taste blood in her mouth where she had bitten her tongue. For a moment she just lay there trying to breathe and understand what had just happened. "Silence," Thrakmol roared. "I did not ask for your legal interpretations, inferior creature." The laboratory became completely quiet except for the hum of computers and the sound of Amy trying to catch her breath. Captain Martinez stepped forward with his hand moving toward his weapon, but he stopped himself. The peace treaty was very clear about what would happen if humans used violence against Korthak inspectors during official visits. But there were other rules. Older rules that existed in every human heart. Amy pulled herself upright using the crate for support. Her ribs hurt badly, and she could feel a bruise forming on her back. Around her, she felt something change in the air. Every human crew member in the room was processing what they had just witnessed. Their faces showed a cold anger that was much more dangerous than shouting or threats. Chief Engineer Pete Johnson had been standing near the door. Now he moved to block the exit without seeming to do it on purpose. Dr. Karen Smith appeared from the medical bay next door. She must have heard the crash. Security Chief Barnes arrived from the other direction with 2 of his officers. None of them were running or shouting orders. They moved with quiet purpose like hunters taking positions around prey. The 3 Korthak soldiers began backing away from their commander. They recognized danger when they saw it, even if Thrakmol did not. Amy activated her communicator with shaking fingers. The shaking was not from fear. It was from rage that she was trying very hard to control. Security Chief Barnes to Laboratory Section. Code Black authorization. All department heads implement Omega Protocol immediately. Barnes spoke into his own communicator. All stations, this is security. Omega Protocol is now active. Repeat, Omega Protocol is active. Throughout the ship, things began to change. Blast doors sealed with hydraulic hisses. Emergency lighting replaced the normal bright lights. The usual hum of ship operations died away, leaving only the whisper of life support systems. Non-essential personnel moved to secure areas. "What is this Omega Protocol?" Thrakmol demanded. His voice carried less arrogance than before. The other Korthak soldiers were pressing themselves against the far wall, clearly wanting to distance themselves from their commander. Amy wiped blood from her split lip and looked directly into the alien's yellow eyes. "It's what happens when someone puts their hands on a member of our crew, War Commander. It's what humans do when diplomacy ends and survival begins." The temperature in the laboratory seemed to drop several degrees. Emergency lighting cast long shadows that made the humans look larger and more threatening. Amy could see Thrakmol's scales beginning to change color, which meant he was starting to feel nervous. Captain Martinez stepped forward. His diplomatic mask had completely fallen away, revealing the hardened military officer underneath. War Commander, you have just committed assault against a Terran officer during an official inspection. According to both human and Korthak law, that action voids your diplomatic immunity. Your weak species cannot dictate terms to Korthak warriors, Thrakmol snarled, but Amy noticed he did not advance any closer to the humans. Engineer Johnson began running diagnostics on nearby control panels. His fingers danced across the screens as he checked various ship systems. Interesting, he said in a conversational tone. Looks like we've got some instabilities developing in the laboratory's atmospheric processors. Might want to evacuate this section soon. Dr. Smith opened her medical kit and began checking supplies. I should mention that Korthak physiology is particularly vulnerable to atmospheric pressure changes. Something about your dual lung system. Sudden decompression can cause very unpleasant effects. Security Chief Barnes nodded gravely. Tragic accidents happen on starships all the time. Mechanical failures, environmental hazards, spatial anomalies. Space is a dangerous place, especially for people who don't follow safety protocols. Amy struggled to her feet, using the supply crate for support. The pain in her ribs was getting worse, but she ignored it. Right now, something more important was happening than her personal injuries. You see, War Commander, she said, her voice steady despite the pain. Humans have this peculiar trait. We're really good at math. Specifically, we're excellent at calculating consequences. She gestured to her crewmates who had positioned themselves at key points around the laboratory without any apparent coordination. Right now, you're outnumbered 6-1. Your shuttle's docking clamps have mysteriously malfunctioned, so you can't leave quickly. The atmospheric recyclers are showing critical errors, and somehow, all security cameras in this section have developed simultaneous technical difficulties. Captain Martinez consulted his datapad with theatrical concern. According to our logs, War Commander, you never completed the boarding process properly. Our sensors show your shuttle docked, but there seems to be some confusion about who actually came aboard. The implications of his words hung in the air like poison gas. If there was no official record of Thrakmol being on the ship, then there would be no official record of what happened to him. Amy took a step closer to the huge alien. Despite his size advantage and obvious physical strength, Thrakmol actually stepped backward. This was not the reaction of a confident warrior. This was fear. Here's what you need to understand about my species, Amy continued. We don't fight fair. We don't follow your warrior codes. We don't respect your strength-based hierarchies. We're pack hunters who learn to use tools. We're social predators who spent millions of years figuring out how to kill things bigger and stronger than ourselves. Engineer Johnson looked up from his control panel. Oh, this is not good. The artificial gravity generators are starting to fluctuate. They're going to cycle through some pretty extreme variations over the next few minutes. The deck plates began to vibrate subtly. Amy felt her inner ear detect the first signs of gravitational changes. The Korthak, with their dense bone structure and heavy musculature, would be far more affected by gravity variations than humans. Thrakmol's yellow eyes darted around the laboratory. For the first time since boarding the ship, he looked uncertain. His fellow Korthak soldiers were clearly terrified of whatever their commander had unleashed. This is a violation of the treaty, Thrakmol attempted, but his translator could not hide the worry in his voice. Actually, it's not, Captain Martinez replied calmly. Article 15, Section C clearly states that any physical assault on crew members during inspection voids all diplomatic protections. You're no longer here under treaty authority, Commander. You're here as an uninvited guest who hurt one of our people. The gravity fluctuations increased slightly. Thrakmol stumbled as his heavy frame struggled to adapt to the changing conditions. The other humans seemed unaffected, having trained for exactly these kinds of emergencies. Amy smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. And uninvited guests who assault our crew members tend to have very unfortunate accidents. The artificial gravity continued to fluctuate in subtle waves that made Thrakmol struggle to maintain his balance. His dense Korthak body was built for heavy gravity worlds, which made the changing conditions much harder for him to handle than the humans. Amy watched as the alien commander's confidence continued to crack. The thing about humans, Amy said, straightening despite the pain in her ribs, is that we're very good at pattern recognition. We see what happens when someone hurts one of our own, and we calculate the appropriate response. Engineer Johnson wiped his hands on a maintenance rag as he emerged from behind a control panel. "Oops," he said in a tone that suggested the problem was anything but accidental. "Looks like I accidentally triggered a maintenance cycle on multiple ship systems. They're going to be running through some pretty extreme diagnostic tests over the next few minutes." The laboratory's environmental systems began cycling through different modes. The air pressure shifted slightly, making everyone's ears pop. The temperature started fluctuating between warm and cool. Lights dimmed and brightened in random patterns. To humans, these changes were annoying but manageable. To Korthak physiology, they could be dangerous. Dr. Smith spoke up from her position near the medical supplies. "I've been studying Korthak biology for my research. Your species evolved on a very stable world with consistent gravity, pressure, and temperature. Rapid environmental changes can cause serious health problems for your people." She opened her medical scanner and pointed it at Thrakmol. The device beeped several times before displaying readings that made her frown with concern. "Your stress indicators are already in the danger zone, War Commander. Your hearts are beating irregularly, and your breathing is becoming shallow." Thrakmol tried to straighten up and look threatening, but another gravity fluctuation made him stumble sideways. He caught himself against a workstation, his claws leaving scratches in the metal surface. "You cannot threaten a Korthak War Commander," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier strength. "My empire will burn your worlds if anything happens to me." Amy exchanged a look with Captain Martinez. They both knew that Thrakmol was bluffing. The Korthak Dominion was already fighting wars on 3 different fronts. They could not afford to start another conflict with humanity, especially over one commander who had violated treaty protocols. "Will they?" Amy asked, taking another step closer. "Because I'm thinking your report back to your superiors is going to be very interesting. Are you going to tell them you assaulted a human officer during a diplomatic inspection? Are you going to explain how you violated every protocol that your own empire established?" Security Chief Barnes cracked his knuckles, and the sound echoed through the laboratory like gunshots. In human culture, when someone hurts a member of your group, you don't just defend them. You make sure it never happens again. To anyone. The gravity fluctuations were getting stronger now. Thrakmol had to grab onto a support beam to keep from falling over. His 3 subordinates were huddled against the far wall, clearly terrified of what they were witnessing. They knew their commander had made a terrible mistake. Captain Martinez stepped forward, his military training evident in his measured tone. "The interesting thing about human pack behavior is that it transcends individual relationships. I've known Commander Chen for 3 years. Johnson over there has worked with her for 6 months. Smith met her yesterday when she came aboard. Doesn't matter." He gestured to the humans positioned around the room. "You touched one of ours. In human evolutionary psychology, that triggers responses that go back millions of years. We're descended from social hunters who survived by protecting their group members." Amy felt a surge of pride for her crewmates. They had not planned this response or practiced it. This was pure human instinct kicking in when one of their own was threatened. Every person in the room would risk their life to protect her, just as she would risk hers for any of them. Engineer Johnson checked another control panel and shook his head sadly. "The environmental controls are really acting up now. Life support systems are cycling through emergency protocols. The computer thinks we're under attack or something." Dr. Smith looked at her medical scanner again. "War Commander, your vital signs are becoming critically unstable. The combination of gravity changes, pressure fluctuations, and stress hormones is putting enormous strain on your cardiovascular system." Thrakmol tried to activate his own communicator to call for help, but the device just produced static. Johnson smiled apologetically. "Sorry about that. The maintenance cycles are interfering with communication systems too. Standard safety protocol during environmental emergencies." The alien commander looked around the laboratory with growing desperation. Every human face showed the same cold determination. These were not the weak, soft creatures that Korthak propaganda described. These were predators who had been triggered into protective mode. Amy moved closer until she was just a few feet away from the towering alien. At this distance, she could smell his fear. It was sharp and acidic, completely different from his normal scent. "Let me explain something about human mathematics," she said in a voice that carried absolute certainty. "When someone hurts one of our people, we don't calculate an equal response. We calculate a response that ensures it never happens again. The gravity fluctuated again, this time more severely. Thrakmal lost his grip on the support beam and crashed to his knees. His heavy body hit the deck plates with a sound like thunder. The other Korthak soldiers pressed themselves even further against the wall. Security Chief Barnes spoke into his communicator. All stations, we have a Code 7 situation in the laboratory. Unauthorized personnel are experiencing medical distress due to environmental hazards. Prepare for emergency evacuation procedures. Code 7 means we remove dangerous individuals from the ship immediately, Captain Martinez explained to the fallen alien commander, usually through the nearest airlock. For their own safety, of course. Dr. Smith knelt down next to Thrakmal with her medical scanner. His condition is deteriorating rapidly. Multiple organ systems are showing signs of failure. The environmental changes are more than his physiology can handle. Amy looked down at the alien who had struck her just minutes before. She felt no satisfaction in seeing him helpless. This was not about revenge. This was about sending a message that would prevent future incidents. Here's your choice, War Commander, she said quietly. You can admit that you made a mistake and violated treaty protocols. You can apologize for assaulting a human officer and request immediate medical evacuation. Your subordinates can file a report explaining that you suffered an unfortunate medical emergency due to equipment malfunctions. She paused to let her words sink in. Or you can continue to threaten us and we can see how long your body can handle these environmental conditions. I'm betting it's not very long. Thrakmal tried to speak but could only manage a weak growl. The gravity fluctuations were coming faster now, and his alien physiology was clearly failing to adapt. Sweat poured from his scaled skin and his breathing had become labored. The 3 Korthak soldiers suddenly stepped forward. The largest one, who seemed to be second in command, spoke in accented but clear human language. Human Captain, our commander requires immediate medical assistance. We request permission to evacuate him to our ship for emergency treatment. Amy smiled. Finally, someone was being reasonable. Captain Martinez looked at the Korthak soldier who had spoken. The alien was clearly trying to save his commander's life, while also avoiding the diplomatic disaster that Thrakmal had created. Martinez respected that kind of loyalty even in an enemy. What is your name and rank? Martinez asked the soldier. I am Sub-Commander Vektar, sir. I serve as second officer of this inspection team. The alien's voice was respectful but firm. Our commander is suffering from what appears to be severe environmental stress. We need to get him medical attention immediately. Amy watched as Thrakmal struggled on the floor. His yellow eyes had lost their arrogance and now showed only pain and fear. The gravity fluctuations were affecting his dense body like hammer blows. Each change in gravitational force made him gasp and writhe. Dr. Smith ran her medical scanner over the fallen commander again. His heart rate is extremely irregular. Blood pressure is spiking dangerously high. If these environmental conditions continue, he could suffer permanent organ damage or death. Engineer Johnson looked up from his control panels with an expression of theatrical concern. I hate to make things worse, but the environmental systems are cascading into more serious malfunctions. The computer is detecting what it thinks are hull breaches, so it's automatically sealing sections and preparing for emergency decompression. The implications were clear. If the computer thought the ship was damaged, it would prioritize saving the human crew over any alien visitors. Airlocks would activate. Compartments would be sealed and vented to space. Anyone not wearing emergency gear would have very little time to reach safety. Sub-Commander Vektar understood the threat immediately. Captain Martinez, we formally request permission to remove our commander from your ship for medical treatment. We also request that this incident be recorded as an unfortunate accident caused by equipment failure. Amy felt a moment of respect for the alien soldier. He was trying to save his commander's life while also protecting both their species from a diplomatic crisis. Vektar understood that if word got out about Thrakmal's assault on a human officer, it could restart the war between their peoples. Captain Martinez nodded slowly. Your request is reasonable, Sub-Commander. However, there are certain conditions that must be met before we can authorize an emergency evacuation. He gestured to Amy, who was still holding her ribs where the pain was worst. War Commander Thrakmal committed assault against one of my officers. According to both human and Korthak military law, that is a serious crime. There must be consequences. Sub-Commander Vektar looked at his dying commander, then at the humans surrounding them. He was clearly trying to find a solution that would satisfy everyone and prevent further violence. "What consequences do you require?" he asked carefully. Amy stepped forward, wincing slightly from the pain in her ribs. First, War Commander Thrakmol must formally apologize for his assault on a Terran officer. Second, he must acknowledge that his actions violated treaty protocols. Third, your inspection team must file a report stating that he suffered a medical emergency due to his own failure to follow safety procedures. She paused, looking down at the gasping alien commander. And fourth, Thrakmol is banned from ever setting foot on another human ship. Any future inspections will be conducted by other officers. Thrakmol tried to speak, but only managed a weak growling sound. The gravity fluctuations were coming even faster now, and his alien body was clearly reaching the limits of what it could endure. Sub-Commander Vektar knelt beside his commander and spoke in the Korthak language. Amy could not understand the words, but the tone was urgent and pleading. After a few moments, Thrakmol managed a weak nod. "War Commander Thrakmol agrees to your terms," Vektar announced. He formally apologizes for his assault on Commander Chen and acknowledges that his actions violated treaty protocols. He accepts responsibility for the medical emergency caused by his failure to follow proper safety procedures. Dr. Smith immediately began preparing an emergency medical kit. "I can stabilize him for transport, but he needs to get to your ship's medical bay immediately. His physiology is shutting down." Engineer Johnson began shutting down the environmental fluctuations. "I can restore normal conditions in about 30 seconds, but you'll need to move fast once I do. The computer is still convinced we're under emergency conditions." Security Chief Barnes activated his communicator. "All stations prepare for emergency medical evacuation. Clear corridors from laboratory section to docking bay 7. Medical emergency in progress." Amy watched as the humans quickly organized to save the life of the alien who had attacked her just minutes before. This was another aspect of human nature that other species often failed to understand. Humans could be absolutely ruthless when protecting their own, but they were also capable of mercy when their enemies surrendered. The gravity returned to normal with a subtle shift that everyone felt in their inner ears. Thrakmol immediately stopped gasping and writhing, though he was still clearly in distress. Dr. Smith injected him with a combination of medications that would stabilize his vital signs long enough to reach his own ship. "Can you walk?" she asked the alien commander. Thrakmol struggled to his feet with help from his subordinates. He was unsteady but mobile. His yellow eyes met Amy's, and for the first time since boarding the ship, she saw something other than arrogance in them. Fear, yes, but also a grudging respect. "I apologize for my assault on you, Commander Chen," he said in heavily accented human language. "My actions were inappropriate and violated the protocols that govern relations between our peoples." Amy nodded. "Apology accepted, War Commander. I hope you recover fully from your medical emergency." The words were carefully chosen. By calling it a medical emergency rather than punishment, both sides could save face. The Korthak could report that their commander suffered an unfortunate accident. The humans could report that they provided emergency medical assistance to a visiting dignitary. Sub-Commander Vektar helped support his commander as they moved toward the laboratory exit. "Thank you for your mercy, Captain Martinez. This incident will be reported exactly as you have specified." Captain Martinez walked with them toward the docking bay. "Sub-Commander, I hope future inspections will proceed more smoothly. Our species have much to gain from peaceful cooperation." As the group left the laboratory, Amy sank into a chair and finally allowed herself to feel the full pain from her injuries. Dr. Smith immediately began examining her ribs with a medical scanner. "2 cracked ribs and severe bruising," Smith announced. "You'll need to take it easy for the next few weeks while they heal." Amy nodded, but her mind was already thinking about the larger implications of what had just happened. Word of this incident would spread through both human and Korthak space. Other aliens would learn that humans could be diplomatic and reasonable, but they would also learn that there were lines that should never be crossed. Engineer Johnson was already writing his report about the environmental system malfunctions. Security Chief Barnes was reviewing the security footage that would officially show nothing useful due to technical difficulties. Captain Martinez was preparing his diplomatic summary of the medical emergency. In a few hours, War Commander Thrakmol would be back on his own ship, alive and recovering. The peace treaty would remain intact. Both species would continue their careful dance of cooperation and mutual suspicion. But something important had changed. A message had been sent that would be understood throughout the galaxy, Humans protected their own, and the consequences of forgetting that fact could be severe. 3 days later, Amy Chen sat in her laboratory reading the official reports that had been filed about the incident. Her ribs still hurt when she moved wrong, but the pain was getting better. Dr. Smith had done a good job treating her injuries. The first report came from Captain Martinez to Human Space Command. It described a routine inspection that was interrupted by a medical emergency. War Commander Thrackmole had suffered severe physiological distress due to unexpected equipment malfunctions in the ship's environmental systems. The human crew had provided immediate medical assistance and successfully evacuated the alien commander to his own vessel for treatment. The second report came from Sub-Commander Vector to the Korthak Dominion. It explained that their inspection team had encountered dangerous mechanical failures aboard the human ship. War Commander Thrackmole had been injured while attempting to help stabilize the situation. The human crew had acted with professionalism and courage to save his life. The report recommended improved safety protocols for future inspections. Both reports were completely accurate. They just did not mention certain details about what had caused the equipment malfunctions or why they had occurred at that particular moment. Amy smiled as she read the technical appendix that Engineer Johnson had written. It was a masterpiece of bureaucratic language that described cascading system failures in excruciating detail. Any engineer reading it would understand exactly how the malfunctions had occurred and how to prevent similar problems in the future. What they would not understand was why anyone would design systems that could fail in such a convenient and targeted way. Dr. Smith's medical report was equally impressive. She had documented every aspect of Korthak physiology that made them vulnerable to environmental stress. Her recommendations for treating alien visitors would become standard procedure throughout the human fleet. Future inspection teams would be required to undergo medical screening and wear protective equipment when boarding human ships. Security Chief Barnes had filed the shortest report of all. It simply stated that surveillance equipment in the laboratory section had experienced temporary malfunctions during the environmental emergency. No useful footage was available of the incident. He recommended upgrading the camera systems to be more resistant to electromagnetic interference. Amy closed the reports and leaned back in her chair. Officially, nothing had happened except an unfortunate accident. War Commander Thrackmole had recovered completely and was back on active duty. The peace treaty remained strong. Relations between humans and Korthak continued to improve. Unofficially, word was spreading through the galactic community about what happened when someone put their hands on a human crew member. The story was told in quiet conversations in spaceport bars and diplomatic lounges. Each telling added new details and made the consequences seem more mysterious and frightening. Some versions claimed that Thrackmole had simply vanished from the human ship without a trace. Others said he had been found floating in space with no memory of how he got there. The most dramatic version suggested that the humans had somehow reached into his mind and driven him insane with terror. Amy knew that all of these stories were false, but she also knew they served an important purpose. Fear was often more effective than actual violence at preventing future problems. If aliens believed that humans had mysterious and terrible ways of dealing with those who threatened their crews, then those aliens would be much more careful about their behavior. A soft chime announced that someone was requesting entry to her laboratory.
Amy looked up to see Captain Martinez standing in the doorway. "How are you feeling?"
he asked, stepping inside and letting the door close behind him. "Better every day," Amy replied. "Dr. Smith says I should be fully healed in another week or two." Martinez nodded and sat down in the chair across from her desk. "I wanted to talk to you about what happened, about how the crew responded." Amy had been thinking about the same thing. In the space of just a few minutes, every human on the ship had moved into protective mode, without any orders or coordination. It had been like watching a pack of wolves respond to a threat against one of their own. "It was impressive," she said, "and a little scary." "The scary part is what makes it effective," Martinez replied. "Other species see humans as individuals first and group members second. They don't understand that we're exactly the opposite. When someone threatens one of us, they're threatening all of us." He pulled out his datapad and showed her a message that had arrived that morning. "This is from Admiral Chen at Fleet Command. She wants to know if we think the incident will affect future diplomatic relations." Amy read the message quickly. The Admiral was clearly concerned that the near disaster with Thrackmole might damage the fragile peace between humans and the Korthak Dominion. What did you tell her? Amy asked. That relations will probably improve, Martinez said with a slight smile. Nothing promotes mutual respect like a clear understanding of consequences. Amy had to agree with that assessment. Subcommander Vektar had been professional and courteous during the evacuation. He had thanked the human crew multiple times for saving his commander's life. More importantly, he had made it clear that future Korthak inspection teams would follow all safety protocols exactly. A month later, the next inspection arrived right on schedule. The new team was led by Commander Seklon, a younger officer who had obviously been briefed very thoroughly about proper behavior aboard human ships. He was polite, respectful, and careful not to make physical contact with any crew members. The inspection proceeded smoothly and efficiently. The Korthak officers did their jobs professionally and found no violations of treaty requirements. When they finished, Commander Seklon personally thanked Captain Martinez for the hospitality shown to his team. We have heard about the excellent medical facilities aboard human ships, Seklon said carefully. It is reassuring to know that our people would receive such good care if any accidents occurred. Martinez smiled. We believe all sentient beings deserve respect and assistance when they need help. That's just part of human nature. After the Korthak team departed, Amy stood in the same laboratory where the incident with Thrakmal had occurred. Everything looked exactly the same as before. The environmental controls worked perfectly. The gravity generators maintained steady output. The surveillance cameras recorded everything with crystal clarity. But something fundamental had changed. Word had spread throughout known space that humans were not the weak, soft creatures that many species believed them to be. Diplomatic relations improved as other species began treating human crews with greater respect and caution. Amy received a personal message from War Commander Thrakmal 3 months after the incident. It was brief and formal, but she could read the meaning between the lines. He thanked her for the medical assistance that had saved his life. He acknowledged that his behavior had been inappropriate and expressed hope that future interactions between their species would be more positive. The message did not contain any threats or promises of revenge. Thrakmal had learned his lesson about the consequences of underestimating humans. Amy deleted the message without responding. Some conversations were better left unfinished. Years later, when she had become a captain herself, Amy would tell the story to new officers joining the fleet. She would explain how humans had survived for millions of years by protecting their group members and how that instinct still lived in every person who wore a uniform. The galaxy is full of species that are stronger than us, faster than us, and more technologically advanced than us, she would say. But none of them have what we have. None of them understand that touching one of us means dealing with all of us. The story of War Commander Thrakmal became part of human military folklore. It was told in academies and training centers throughout human space. Each telling reinforced the same message. We protect our own, and the consequences of forgetting that fact can be severe. In official records, Thrakmal had suffered an unfortunate medical emergency and been saved by the quick thinking of a human medical team. In unofficial stories, he had simply disappeared for 5 minutes and returned a changed being. Both versions were true in their own way. The official version preserved diplomatic relations and maintained the peace. The unofficial version sent a message that echoed throughout the galaxy. Do not test human loyalty, because you will not like the results. Amy Chen continued her career in space, eventually commanding her own exploration vessel and making first contact with several new species. She always remembered the lesson from that day in the laboratory. Sometimes the most important victories are the ones that never have to be fought because everyone understands the consequences of starting the battle.